Kayle has had a sudden surge of both popularity and success. In fact, she is one of the most picked top laners in the entire game right now. This is because Kayle is insanely safe in the early game, but she scales into an absolute monster into the late game. This means that Kayle is just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off, and today we're going to be covering exactly what you need to be doing as Kayle to see the most success that you possibly could. Welcome to the Ultimate Kayle Guide. If you're looking for more guides similar to this one, maybe on top lane specifically, then make sure to check out our website GameLeap.com. There we have a course on the top lane essentials covering everything that you need to know about top lane. It's not just top lane, however. We have these courses for all 5 fundamental roles as well as champion specific courses. If that is something that piques your interest, then make sure to check us out using the link in the description below. Now, without further ado, let's get right into what you should be doing in the early laning phase as Kayle in order to survive. That's right, your only goal in the early laning phase as Kayle is just to survive and get to your level 6. If you try to play aggressive as Kayle and all-in people before you have your ranged form from level 6, then you're not gonna have a good time. Now in Season 9, people took Kleptomancy for Kayle as a rune, but remember that won't exist in Season 10, so instead you're going to want to take either Fleet Footwork or Lethal Tempo. Both of these options are really good still. Fleet Footwork is really good into harder lanes because it allows you to sustain much more without using all of your mana on your W. If you're into something super passive in the early game, however, I would recommend taking Lethal Tempo because you're going to get sustained from your Gunblade anyways, and Lethal Tempo is going to turn you into a much harder scaling hyper carry. In secondary, I would recommend taking Bone Plating and Overgrowth simply because this combination of runes makes it impossible to one-shot you, and you're pretty much always going to have an opportunity to get your ults off. Now, how are we going to play the lane phase in a safe enough manner that guarantees that we won't die and we won't fall behind in CS? Well, first of all, it's very important that you start a Corrupting Pot. Remember, you are not going to be ranged until level 6, so you're going to have to use your abilities to farm in the first few waves. Now, I guess you could start Doran's Ring, but the mana sustain from Corrupting Pot is going to be much better, and on top of that, it gives health sustain because you don't want to be using your W all too much in the early game, pretty much only for move speed. Remember that Doran's Blade, Doran's Shield, and Dark Seal are all big no-nos for starting items. You don't want these. Even though you're a ranged carry, you don't want Doran's Blade because you don't turn ranged until level 6. Put points in your Q early on so that you can safely farm creeps without wasting too much mana. Remember, if you max your E, it's going to be a huge mana cost, and you won't be able to farm well with it, and you're just going to run yourself Level 1, you are going to want to start your E simply because it is a really good ability at level 1, and Kayle's level 1 specifically is actually pretty strong if you do start E. The biggest reason, however, why you start E level 1 instead of Q is because you do not want to push the wave. Your level 2 is not good enough for you to be safe if you are in a pushing lane. In most matchups, if the wave is pushing towards the enemy, they're just going to be able to freeze on you, and then you're not going to be able to walk up and CS anymore. As long as you drop minion aggro properly after using your E on the enemy champion in order to poke, it's not going to push towards them, which allows you to be in a much safer location. Remember that as pre-level 6 Kayle, the tower is your best friend and you want to be as close to it as possible. If you're able to keep these things in mind while playing pre-6, then you probably won't die even a single time, and you're going to have even CS with your laner, which is really important. I see so many Kayle players come out of the early laning phase with 20 or 30 CS down, and this is not optimal. If you come out of the early laning phase with this big of a deficit, then it doesn't matter that you suddenly turned ranged at level 6, you don't have the income in order to back that up. If you're able to master the first 6 levels and come out even or ahead in the first 6 levels, then I guarantee you're going to see an increase in your win rate on Kayle. So now that we're level 6 with the same amount of CS, what should we be looking to do to the enemy champion? Remember, we're ranged now, so we're a bully. Since this is the case, your gameplay should dramatically shift. No longer do you want to be playing hyper safe under your tower without ever going for trades and only focusing on CSing. Once you're ranged, you turn into a bully and you want to be trading as much as possible whenever the enemy does not have a chance to trade back with you. Every time that they go for a CS, give them a little love tap, auto them once or twice, and then back away. Make sure that you drop the minion aggro in between these trades, otherwise minions are going to do more damage to you than you are able to do to the enemy champion. You can drop minion aggro by walking into the brush in the top lane, or simply by just walking back towards your tower if they're being more aggressive trying to trade back. If you are able to look for kills at level 6, then that's perfect, that's fantastic. But don't expect to be able to do so quite yet, since Kayle doesn't really come online until she's finished her Gunblade. Your main focus should be forcing the enemy laner base to make them miss as many creeps as possible, or looking for tower plates. Remember that gold and EXP are the only things that you care about in the laning phase as Kayle. You want to hit level 11 as soon as possible, which will allow you to farm literally everything. For this reason, Kayle is going to be one of the few top laners that you take TP on and you pretty much only TP back to your own lane. You don't want to miss a single drop of that sweet, juicy EXP that you need in order to hit level 11. Just to recap, from level 6 to 11, you're still mostly just going to be chilling in the lane, farming, getting gold and EXP. You can start poking the enemy laner down a little bit with auto attacks anytime they walk up for any CS, if they're not too aggressive of a lane, and if you do see a kill opportunity, you can take it. Other than that, you want to look for tower plating anytime you can, because this will allow you to get your Gunblade and your Nashor's Tooth quicker. Now, once you hit level 11, this is when Kayle really comes online. You're able to increase the amount of golden EXP that you can get an insane amount by hitting level 11, especially if you have a Gunblade finished. Now, if you don't have Gunblade finished, then you're doing something wrong. You should have it by now. Remember, Gunblade allows you to farm both jungle creeps and push waves really quickly without losing any HP for it. At level 11, you should be taking either Krugs or Gromp whenever you can, pushing out waves, getting towers, looking for CS in the enemy's jungle. Any form of gold and EXP income is what you want to be looking at. If somebody contests you on a wave, then you can just fight them. There isn't very many things that beat Kayle once she hits level 11 and 2 items. Now, there are some counter matchups that you are going to need to be careful into, but the majority of matchups that you're going to be playing, you're not going to have to worry one bit. If a fight goes poorly, you can always ult yourself, give yourself movement speed and a heal with your W, and then use the additional move speed that you have from your passive to just get out of there. One thing that you should not be doing on Kayle once you hit level 11 is shoving to a tower and then just standing outside of range of that tower waiting for the enemy laner to just CS the creeps and shove the wave back to you. If you are at the enemy tower but you can't hit it, go into the enemy jungle instead. You can place a ward, you can take CS, you can look to fight the enemy jungler, you can do literally anything and it will be more productive than just standing outside of tower range. If you're not able to outright take the tower, I wouldn't even recommend hitting the tower at all. It's going to be more worth your while to look for jungle creeps instead. Now, level 11 is also when Kayle can start grouping with her team. This is something that's going to be dependent on the game. If there's a lot of fighting going on, you might be forced to group. But if it's a slow game and there isn't much fighting and you're allowed to just farm, that's great, because once Kayle hits level 16, the game is looking pretty over. Just to recap, from levels 11 to 16, your only goal is to farm as much as possible. Take all the jungle camps you can, take all of the lane farm that you can, and only group if a lot of fighting is going on. Now, level 16 and onward is the hardest part to play for Kayle. This is because the majority of the game is going to be on your shoulders since you are the hyper carry. If you get to level 16 as Kayle, you're going to have to play mechanically well. Make sure that you're positioning well during team fights, not overextending or allowing any assassins easy access to you. Remember, you don't want to just dive in and hit any high priority targets. Your level 16 Kayle, you do an insane amount of damage, you can just hit whatever is in front of you. Now, if their ADC Vayne flash tumbles into you, for example, during a late game teamfight, then obviously focus the Vayne. You don't want to be hitting the tank then. But for the most part, the tank's going to be in front. You want to melt them down first and then focus on other targets. From your third item in Onwards, honestly, it is up to you. There are plenty of things that work well. Ginsu's, Wit's End, Lichbane, Deathcap. There's plenty of stuff to build, so just try it out and see how you like it. Pretty much no matter which of these options you go for, you're going to be dealing a lot of damage. Your Q has a Shred on it, your E has a Execute on it, you have heal and movement speed, you've got an invulnerability ult, you are just so perfectly suited for the late game. The big thing about level 16 on Kayle is not only do you get 50 additional attack range, but you also don't have the ramp up time in a team fight. Pretty much when hitting level 16, you get bonus attack speed, bonus movement speed, bonus attack range, bonus on-hit damage. There is so much you get for hitting level 16, it is not even funny. This is the main reason why Kayle's late game is so insane, and if you're taking lethal tempo, that is just going to compound on top of everything. Kayle, however, is not one of those champions that can hit level 16 and then go into the side lane and 1v5. That is not what you're looking to do with Kayle. Kayle always works better with a team. You want to have a meat shield in front of you soaking damage, laying down CC. You don't want to go off on your own because you're not going to be able to 1v5. A huge portion of Kayle's kit is utility, and if you're the only person there, then you're not going to be able to capitalize on that utility to its fullest potential. Now, the last thing that I do want to address is how should you be using Kayle's ultimate? For yourself or for other people? The honest answer is, it depends. Sometimes in the late game, your teammates are only going to be useful for soaking damage, and the rest is going to be on you. While your ultimate will help them soak more damage, it's going to be better served on you in these cases. Sometimes, however, you're going to have another hyper carry on your team, for example, maybe Vayne, and you might have a Lulu support with that. And in those cases, it turns you into more of a protect the Vayne kind of comp, where your ultimate will probably go on to Vayne, and she's probably going to be dealing the most damage. If your carries are dying, then your ultimate should be reserved for those carries. However, if they haven't died at all in a teamfight, then you can use it on the front line. One thing you really don't want to do is just use your ultimate on whoever gets low. That is not going to be a useful ultimate a lot of the time, and it's going to be better saved for certain scenarios. A lot of the time, it is okay to let your teammates die without ulting them in order to save your ultimate for a more important target. At the end of the day, it is going to come down to decision making, and it will take you a little bit of time to develop the proper decision making. Sometimes you might even use it on a fragile backline diver of your own in order to help deal some more damage to one of their backline carries. It has an insane amount of different uses, and you're going to have to learn them all. Remember, at level 16 plus, you want to group, don't split push, team fight well, position well, hit whatever is in front of you, and you're probably going to end up winning the team fight. That is just about all that I have for you for today's video on Kayle. If you enjoyed today's video and you're looking for more guides similar to this one, then make sure to check out our website, GameLeap.com. There we have hundreds of guides, all done by challenger players, sorted into a quick and easy to use courses system. We have courses both on the 5 fundamental roles as well as champion-specific courses, so if that is something that interests you, then make sure to check it out using the link in the description below. As always, I'm Panther, I hope you learned something valuable, and I will see you in the next one.